It almost feels like every Panther fan is asking the same question coming off of Sunday's game. What in the world is going on with Xavier Legette? I'll try to answer that question among other listener questions on this weekly Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. This episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. We are back once again on a Wednesday here on Locked On Panthers. And what do we do on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season? I answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. To get those questions into me, all you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council. No Twitter, no problem. Hit me up on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. And I'll say this. Pretty much every week I get repeat questions from people, but this week I have gotten one question I feel like more than any question in recent memory here on the mailbag, and it pertains to number 17, Xavier Leggette. Now, Hans, you're the lucky one who gets to have their name said out loud on the show, as you are among many people who asked this question, asking at what point do you think it is time for the Panthers to bench Xavier Legette? I know the front office would love to stick with him because of the sunk cost fallacy, but when Bryson Tremaine looked infinitely better, more determined, and better conditioned, I think we all have to believe that it's time for XL to take a seat. Now, you may believe that, Hans, and plenty of other people who've reached out to me may also believe that. But one person who does not believe it's time to sit Xavier Legette is the head coach, Dave Canales. We talked to him on Monday. He was asked by Scott Fowler of the Charlotte Observer if he was thinking about possibly limiting Xavier Legette's reps and not having him out there as a starter. And he said, no, I believe in Xavier. He's going to get through this. We're going to play him despite some pretty damning stats that I'm going to read off to y'all right now. Our friends over at True Media got these numbers from them. Among wide receivers with at least 10 targets through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, Xavier Legette is dead last with a success rate of 6.3%. The next closest wide receiver is Calvin Ridley at 28.6%. Again, 6.3% success rate. The next closest, 28.6. That's brutal. Now, compare that to the other starting receivers here in Carolina. Hunter Renfrow is at 46.7%. Tedero McMillan is at 52.6%. And again, Xavier Legette is sitting down there with a 6.3% success rate, the worst among wide receivers through the first 2 weeks of the NFL with at least 10 targets in a game. Now, you look at his EPA, it's not much better either. His EPA, expected points added per target, with at least 10 targets this season, is at a minus 0.98. The next closest is Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville. And honestly, Carolina has something to say about that because they held him to pretty much a shutout there week one. He's at a minus 0.74. Legette minus 0.98. Brian Thomas Jr. minus 0.74. Catch percentage. Legette has a 26.7 catch percentage, which is only ahead of the aforementioned Brian Thomas Jr., who was a revelation last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars as a rookie, something that Xavier Legette was not. So despite those numbers, and despite him whiffing on a block week one, the piss-poor effort getting back on Sunday, Xavier Legette is not going to be sat down. Dave Canales still believes in him. Now, it could be fair to ask, if you're willing to bench the quarterback, Bryce Young, last year after two terrible performances. Why would you not be willing to then bench Xavier Legette after 2 poor performances? Now, you could say the reasoning would be they have Andy Dalton, an experienced veteran, and that Bryce was so bad that it was dragging down the entirety of the offense, that it was an untenable situation. When you're having Adam Thielen have a mental breakdown on the sideline in week 2, you have big problems. And I'm sure Dave saw that and realized, yeah, I can't keep moving forward with Bryce Young. It's a lot different with the wide receiver because Xavier Legette's not sinking the Panthers offense. Now, he's not elevating it. When they target him, it's a negative play for Carolina. He's not helping them at all at this point in time, but it's not like he is making the offense just at a point where they cannot succeed. That's not the case because Tyrell McMillan looks awesome. Hunter Renfrow had 2 touchdowns. He's looking pretty good so far. And even guys like Bryson Tremaine are stepping up. Now, if it were me, yeah, I would probably be considering, at least for one game, giving Bryson Tremaine an opportunity as he was out there to close out the game on Sunday and Xavier Legette was on the bench. I would send a message and then get him back out there at some point in time. But the big thing to me that stood out to what Dave Canales says, he believes in Xavier Legette. That's why he's not going to bench him. Last year when he benched Bryce Young, he wasn't talking about, I believe in Bryce, so we're going to keep him out there. You'll never be able to convince me. Like, that man did not believe in Bryce Young. He did not. And you looked at when he brought him back in, the play calls, he did not believe in Bryce. Bryce had to earn his trust, the locker room's trust, the organization's trust, and rightfully so after the way he played in the first couple of weeks. But it was abundantly clear that he did not believe in Bryce. But he believes in Xavier, who wasn't impressive last year for the most part and has not been impressive at all and has not helped Bryce Young a lick this season. He's going to keep him out there. And anyone who's watched this show since Xavier was drafted knows I was never the biggest Xavier Legette fan when looking at the draft process and looking at the wide receivers that potentially would be available for Carolina. I was a Keon Coleman guy, and Keon Coleman had a better season last year. Now, having Josh Allen certainly helps. He's off to a solid start again up in Buffalo, but that's who I wanted. And if you look at all the receivers that were drafted around Xavier Legette there at the end of the first round, in the early part of the second round in that draft in 2024, the only one you can say that he has been definitively better than is Jalen Polk up in New England, who just got traded to the Saints the other day and is on season-ending IR. He has been a massive disappointment for the Patriots and did not help Drake May out, and I'm not so sure if the change of scenery is going to help him down there in New Orleans. He's the only one you can say that Xavier Legette has been better than. I can't say he's been better than Keon Coleman. He certainly has not been better than Ladd McConkey, and he has not been better than Ricky Pearsall, who had an incident before the season that would not lead you to believe that he would put up better numbers than someone who, yes, was banged up, but was not in the situation that Pearsall was before last year. So he's got a long way to go. And understand this, too. He's 2 games into his second year as a pro, and his should be afforded some patience. Like I felt like last year, 2 games into the partnership with Dave Canales of new weapons and new offensive line, Bryce should have been afforded more patience, but Dave felt like because of the position he was playing, and it makes sense that he had to sit Bryce, even though I felt like playing him was the best thing for him to give an opportunity to play through it, to have the experience, and to hopefully improve on the job. But Dave sat him down, and it turned out to be the best thing for Bryce. And you have to know your players. And he believes the best thing for Xavier Legette and for the Carolina Panthers is to continue to trot him out there, even though he has been a negative for them the first 2 weeks of the season. Will that work out in the Panthers' favor and in Xavier Legette's favor? Only time will tell. But right now, it's not looking good. And I'm concerned because I felt like the best thing for XL was that Tyrell McMillan was coming in as the 8th overall pick and that he would then have the number 1 wide receiver expectations. I never felt like Xavier was going to be that. And he certainly is even far away right now from even being a solid number 3 right now for the Panthers or for any team in the NFL. But he deserves a little bit of grace and a little bit of patience. And that's coming from someone who really is not a big Xavier Legette believer. I think he can be good as enough in this offense. Do I ever think he's going to be what McMillan's been so far and what McMillan, I believe, will be? No. But can he still help Carolina down the road, win games? Absolutely. But that needs to come sooner rather than later because Jalen Coker He's working back from the quad injury, going to miss at least the next 2 games, but we're not sure how much longer he's going to be out and what he's going to look like when he comes back here to Carolina. So, yeah, XL has not been good. Has been quite possibly the worst wide receiver through the first 2 weeks, depending on what metric you look at. But Dave Canales believes in him. He's someone they invested in, and they're going to need to see that investment play out sooner rather than later, or, well, there's another swing and a miss by the Carolina Panthers at the wide receiver position. The good thing is the guy they picked this past year, that is not the case with him. So what's going on with Xavier Legette? Young player, trying to figure it out. Let's see if he does. Let's take a quick pause, and I'll come back and answer more of your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Hunter Renfrow, who after sitting out last season in battling over the last couple of seasons, ulcerative colitis, and initially being cut from the roster because Dave Canales did not think he was physically there, he went out there and had 2 touchdowns on Sunday in Arizona, helping the Carolina Panthers in their comeback attempt against the Cardinals. Hunter could have quit last year, could have quit a couple of weeks ago when he was cut. He could have given up, but instead he kept moving forward, going for it no matter what. And his comeback story is something that should keep Panther fans moving forward as well. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from the seat before buying. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. And why not go ahead and use Game Time on Sunday when the Atlanta Falcons come to town for the Panthers home opener? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. The big news out of Carolina on Monday is that offensive lineman Robert Hunt and Austin Corbett are headed to injured reserve. They possibly could be back later on this season. I don't have a ton of hope that Robert Hunt will be back because of the torn biceps that he suffered looking at the last 2 seasons. Austin Corbett suffered one in week 5, did not return. Brady Christensen suffered one in week 1, did not return. Everybody's different. The severity of it can be different, of course, but hard to believe just based off of typically what happens when that happens, that Robert Hunt will be back. But there is a possibility that Austin Corbett will be back for the Carolina Panthers as their starting center. But there's a question from Ian of whether the Panthers should keep Austin around. Ian asking, with the news that Austin Corbett and Robert Hunt are both now on IR, do you think it's time for the Panthers to move off of Corbett? In my opinion, it looked and felt like Bryce played some of his best games with Cade Mays under center during the latter part of last year. Communication and blitz recognition also felt like a better operation during that time as well. Hope Corbett has a quick recovery for his health, but injuries are adding up and can't ignore the early season struggles the last couple of years with him and Bryce. Now, I'll say this. The last part of that, I don't think it's Austin Corbett's fault at all that Bryce Young came out there and looked terrible in week 1 and week 2 against the Saints and against the Chargers last year. I don't think that's on Austin Corbett. I don't think Austin Corbett's to blame for all the turnovers Bryce Young's had in the first 2 weeks of the season last year and this year. And I know he wasn't blocking a soul on that strip sack that was recovered for a touchdown. I know, but I'm not going to put all that on Austin Corbett. If anything, with the blitz recognition, I'm putting that on the coach for not having his guys prepared and for getting out schemed in that situation, much like he got out schemed last year in week 1 when the same corner blitz of Alontae Taylor was not picked up 3 separate times in that game. That's on coaching. I'm not blaming Austin Corbett there, and I'm damn sure not blaming him for Bryce looking unplayable to start last season and for the mistakes Bryce has made so far this year. The snaps have not been good so far this season, and that throws off the timing, and that was unacceptable, and that could not continue. Now, it got better in week 2, when in week 1, it was really bad, and I don't feel like that was something he did a year ago, so I don't know what was going on there, but a lot of people have made the comparison of how, or the correlation rather, of when Bryce was playing really well at the end of last season, those 8 games when he was a top 10 quarterback according to PFF, that it was with Cade Mays at center. And maybe that Cade Mays being out there was a big reason why Bryce played well. And I would understand, and I can understand, when Bryce has a situation like that where he's playing well and a guy who's snapping the ball and is part of helping him call out protections is out there while he's playing well, that you would want to keep things the same. Now, from my understanding, from being out there on a daily basis during training camp, this was really never a competition. Now, Dave Canales, he came out on that Monday after whenever it was, after the Browns preseason game, and he said, quote, "I mean, it was really a close competition. I think Corbett just brings a level of leadership that just kind of edged him out, in my opinion. So again, competition brings out the best in both guys, and I was really proud of how they competed." He said it was a close competition. But man, that competition was over before the Browns even got to town. And when he talks about the leadership aspect and really the experience, how is Cade Mays ever going to win that job off Austin Corbett if that was going to be a part of the criteria? He never was. And if you just look at the contracts that they signed as well, let me pull that up here. The money they were giving to Austin Corbett, far more than what they were going to be giving to Cade Mays. Like, they gave Austin Corbett a 1-year deal with a base $3 million, and it could go up to $7 million if he ended up starting and hitting all the play time and all that kind of stuff, hitting every benchmark. Cade Mays, he signed like a small tender. He wasn't going to make that much money. He's not making that much money this season. And all you got to look a lot of times is at the contracts to know who's going to start. So Austin Corbett was always going to be their guy because of the money, because of the experience, the leadership, all of those things. And I hear y'all with how Bryce played with Cade, and on Wednesday, when I'm at Panthers practice and at the press conference with Dave, I'm going to ask because I want to know, because I keep hearing it parroted around by the fan base that great, Cade's in there. Bryce played well when Cade was there. So that must mean something. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But I'm going to ask what kind of correlation at all there was and how much credit Cade deserves and what he liked from Cade during that period of time. I will ask that on Wednesday, and we'll get a real answer. But as far as Austin Corbett, whether he should continue in Carolina, you're looking at it now. This is 4 straight years he's had a significant injury, a torn ACL at the end of 2022. Like, literally had played every snap all season long. Then he goes down, and that one ruins his next season. He comes back, doesn't look great in those 4 games, and then tears his MCL. Last year, comes back, things are going well, biceps tear. And now this season, things aren't as great, of course. Grade 3 MCL sprain. He could be back at some point in time. Friend who's a doctor said, it could be like 6 to 8 weeks. It really depends on the guy and the recovery and all of that. Now, of course, you're going to have the best doctors. It's not going to be like you and me or you and I suppose. But, yeah, I just think at this point in time, Cade Mays is going to get probably 15 games the rest of the year to be the starting center. And if he looks the way he looked in the last year, where he graded out above Austin Corbett, playing more snaps, by the way, than Austin Corbett, and still grading up above him, I would think that you would want to go with a younger guy who's also going to be a lot cheaper. And you could probably just sign him to the kind of deal you sign Corbett to. Maybe you give him a 2-year deal instead, but it ain't going to cost you a lot. And you look at the offensive line as well. It's like, if everything goes well, if everything works out, which is not so far, but if everything turns around, the Panthers end up being a solid team, you just paid Taylor Moton. You got Damian Lewis under contract for another year. You paid Robert Hunt a lot of money, so he should be back, whether he comes back at all this season. And in Ike Ekwonu, you got the 5th-year option. You're going to be trying to figure out a deal for him, I'm thinking, after the season. It actually would help the offensive line if it is, instead of Austin Corbett, Cade Mays, because he just would not cost as much as Corbett likely would if he came back to be the starting center late on the season. They felt good about him going into next year. But the injuries, 4 straight years, kind of tough sell at this point in time, I would think. And also, who's going to be calling the shots? Because if they keep playing this bad, keep losing games, the question whether Dan Morgan and Dave Canales will be calling the shots next season in Carolina. Let's take one more quick pause, and I'll come back here and answer more of your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, to your Mondays, to your Thursdays, and, well, pretty much every single day there's football on your television. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so gone long on answering those first two questions. So going to try to be a lot quicker on the remaining questions here on today's show. Going over now to David. For a head coach, that's Dave Canales, who has told all of us he wants to establish a run. He said stubborn about running the football, actually, David. We aren't doing a ton of running with two running backs, so we're over 1,000 yards last season, bottom 10 in the league in yards per game. Is Dave leaning too much on trying to develop Bryce that he's losing sight of what seemingly has been a Panther staple for 2 decades? Yeah, you're right. They have not run the ball a lot so far. David, through 2 weeks, the Panthers are 26th in the NFL in rushing attempts of only 44. When you look at yards per attempt, they have really not been successful when running the ball. 25th in yards per attempt at 3.7. Looking at rushing success rate, 43.5%. That's 23rd in the NFL. And it's not like they haven't had the football. Time of possession is actually 11th. The problem is, well, you look at Sunday. What happened? Bryce Young came out, fumbled the ball, touchdown Arizona. Came back to the next drive, interception. You get behind 10 points, and then you stop trying to run the football. You got to get out of your game plan. Now, it was only a 13-3 game right at the end of the half, under 2 minutes after Arizona kicked that field goal, and Dave Canales wanted to run the ball then, and then there was no sense of urgency afterwards. And then the catch, no catch by JT Sanders led to Arizona getting the ball back and it being 20-3. And when you're down 20-3, then 27-3, you're probably not going to be running the football. Like, that's the issue for this team a lot of times. And it goes back to last year as well, when people had the same questions, including myself. They're always trailing. If you're not ever in the lead, or at least within a score, it's hard to stick to the game plan to run the damn ball. So that's the problem. Maybe stop going out there and spotting 10 points per game, and then maybe they'll run the ball a little bit more. But they certainly seem to be far more dedicated to it last week at Jacksonville than they were on Sunday in Arizona. James, he asked a question about Xavier Legette, but he also asked a question at the end of that. If the Panthers are developing, he puts that in air quotes, or just quotes actually, but I'm putting it out in air quotes, young players, why has Jimmy Horn Jr. been a healthy scratch? I think it's pretty simple here. You look at the depth chart, which in season actually matters. He's behind Trevor Etienne, Rico Dowdle, and David Moore as a returner, both as like a punt returner and a kickoff returner. So he's behind those three guys, and he's not the number 3 wide receiver like Etienne's number 3 back. He's not really a guy who's going to be a core special teamer like David Moore is. He's not the number 2 back like Rico Dowdle. He's also, when you look at it, he's behind McMillan, behind Renfro, behind Legette, behind Tremaine, and behind Moore at wide receiver. I actually, last week on the coordinator press conference Zoom call, I asked Tracy Smith, the Panthers special teams coordinator, about Dale Von Campbell, the guy who they claimed off the waivers from South Carolina to be a gunner. And I asked him, he was not active week 1, and was there a plan on Sunday against Arizona moving forward to get him active? And he mentioned that the problem for Dale Von is that he's new here, and that he has to catch up on the offensive side of the ball to be that 5th receiver. And if that's the case with Dale Von Campbell, which, again, new guy, going to be a gunner, not a returner, which I would think as a gunner would give him an opportunity to be on the field quicker than Jimmy Horn when he already has Etienne, Dowdle, and more ahead of him. A gunner would be more of a specialized position, hence special teams, for a guy like Dale Von Campbell. If they're going to have him out there as potentially the 5th guy or the 6th guy, he's going to have to know the offense better. And so from what I take from that when looking at Jimmy Horn Jr. is is that they don't think he adds enough right now to be ahead of Tedero McMillan, Hunter Renfrow, Bryson Tremaine. Seems pretty clear. Xavier Legette, maybe, and David Moore. Those are the 5 guys they want to roll with, and they don't see any reason to have a 6th guy at this point in time in Horn, who is not one of their top 3 returners and isn't one of their top 5 wide receivers. So they're developing him behind the scenes. I talked to him in the locker room last week, just trying to get anything out of him as far as what do you feel like you need to do? He's just like, just got to keep working. He didn't really want to talk about his position on the team. He was down to talk about Ryan Staub, the quarterback at Colorado, but he was not really trying to get into anything as far as where he sits right now in Carolina. So I think that's the best thing I can tell you right now is he's behind those guys as returners and as receivers, and he's got to just find a way to beat somebody out because right now that's not been the case. Damian asking, and he's asked this question a lot this offseason, should the Panthers pursue Justin Simmons? Nick Scott doesn't deserve to be on the field, in my opinion. I had another person say that Jairo Rivera should be on the hot seat because he keeps playing Nick Scott. I guess that's one reason for him to be on the hot seat, and I'm sure you also feel the other way. That person who told me that. If anything, at this point in time, the Panthers are going to go with Lathan Ransom or Damani Richardson. Lathan did play more on Sunday in that game against Arizona. He had only 12 snaps, but he was the 2nd highest graded defender according to PFF on Sunday. Nick Scott played 54. So I think that snap count will tick down as the season progresses. But right now, Jairo is not really looking to play the young guys over Nick Scott at this point in time. And I don't think they're going to pursue Justin Simmons because they drafted Lathan Ransom. They got Damani Richardson. If anything, I think they'd just give the young guys an opportunity. So that's my thoughts there. And then lastly, from Nick and from Eric, basically asking the same question in a different way. Nick asking, in your opinion, is it players, personnel, ownership, or some other factor that makes this team look absolutely inept and underwhelming compared to the rest of the NFL? This team is healthy and returned a significant amount of the same players, but damn, it looks like none of them have ever stepped on a football field prior to kickoff. And then Eric asking, what are we supposed to make of this team? They play so bad, then turn around and look like a playoff contender once the game is out of reach. Yeah. To the first part, with Nick's question, I don't know what it is, man. I really don't know because it's not like they don't have good players on this team. It's not like Derek Brown can't play and JC Horn can't play. Like there are guys who are certainly capable. We have seen it. Even at the end of last year, you saw them look like a real NFL team. And I sat there on Sunday and I was watching all the other 1:00 games. And the only team that looked as inept as Carolina were the New York Jets, which apparently the Carolina Panthers are tied with the New York Jets since David Tepper bought the team with the worst record in the NFL. So not the kind of company you want to be keeping. And I'm sure they're saying the exact same thing in New York. But damn, man, why does it have to look that bad? Why is it I can turn on the game and while Chicago's getting their doors blown off, they're at least capable of moving the ball? Why is it so difficult for Carolina and it's not seemingly that difficult for anybody else in the league outside of the New York Jets? I don't know what it is. I truly don't. I don't think the Panthers are cursed. It's crazy how this has gotten so bad and how you see what they're capable of in the second half and what they're capable of in the second half of last season. And then you come into this year and you're right back to square one. Like, why is it like that? I can't answer that for you, man. I really don't know. And then with Eric asking about what is supposed to make of this team, Dave Canales told us back in, I believe, June that it was going to take 4 to 6 weeks to find out who this team is. Well, that could be in 2 weeks after New England or after Dallas and after Miami. This is supposedly the easy part of the schedule where you had a game against Jacksonville, who also was terrible last year defensively, and you lost that one, and it wasn't close. And in Arizona, that one wasn't really close, and then it was, but then when they needed to stop, they got to stop. A team you've dominated. Couldn't win that one. Atlanta, that's a winnable game. Not if you spot them 10 points, it isn't, but on paper, winnable. New England, certainly winnable. Dallas, Miami. These are supposed to be the games Carolina can win. Now, starting off the season, first 3 out of 4 on the road did not do them any favors. And that's much like a couple of years ago when they started off 0-6. They had, I think, first 4 out of 6 on the road. It's just like, why is Carolina getting this schedule? I mean, hell, Kansas City's probably asking the NFL as well. It's like, why are you having us go play the Chargers in Brazil and then go on to be back home, play Philadelphia. At least Carolina's not playing those teams. They come later. So I don't know what it is. I truly don't. It's something, because I saw Steve Smith Sr. was saying that the Panther fans are fair weather and that Charlotte is soft as a city when it comes to this team. I mean, people keep showing up. They keep listening. They've been through a lot, and it's not like the Hornets are giving you much anyways. The only winning team in town are the Charlotte FC. I think they won like 9 straight or something like that, and only so many people really care about that. It's great. Happy to have MLS. But yeah, there's not a lot to look at. Charlotte football, as in the 49ers, aren't great, but you have to be like an alum, I suppose, to really care about that. Not a lot going on. I don't know how the Knights are doing. It's also AAA baseball, so whatever. It is what it is. Hopefully it gets better soon. But right now, don't really know. But week-to-week league, we'll see how they play on Sunday. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show for free over on YouTube at Julian Council, or actually, don't subscribe at YouTube, over on YouTube, and then follow me over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where you can get your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions in immediately following the game on Sunday. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. I'll be back tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons going to join me here on the show to break down the Panthers and Falcons Week 3 NFC South showdown at Bank of America Stadium.